All right. Tuesday night, guys. What is happening? It's going to come on and give you some thoughts about this past weekend's America's Strongest Man competition. Going to be a relatively short one tonight, but want to keep up with these lives. I'm going to share a lot of things that I learned and saw and watched happen in front of me at this competition. So, I'm going to share some of my experiences and help you learn from them. So, let's dive right in. The America's Strongest Man, 80 kilos. In the past couple of years, Strongman Corporation has really ramped up their push for some of the higher level shows. So the Arnold is now the Arnold Pro-Am World Championships. They have all the different weight class World Strongest Man. I think this was the second year of the 80 kilo America's Strongest Man, and the talent was absolutely incredible. So one thing I have to say about this from the gate is that this was a very high level production from top to bottom. The equipment, the venue, the stream, the communication was all very, very good going in. So I have nothing but props and respect to Derek Owens, Shelly Owens, James Deffenbaugh, and the whole Battle Axe barbell crew out of Texas for putting on a great show. So kind of just going through everything. First thing we'll kind of talk about is the water cut process. So I went on a little bit of a different path this time. I was able to go from 189 pounds down to 176.4, but in kilos, that's about 85 and a half kilos, and that was down to just under 80. I was 79.85 as my official weigh-in, 176.0 on the dot. So what really worked well this time was a shorter, more intense protocol. So I started cutting carbs out about Sunday. So a week out from the competition, I was at 50 grams of carbs the whole time. And then we loaded water really quick and really intense. So my nutritionist is out of the UK. It's all in liters. But we started on Tuesday was 8 liters of water. Wednesday was 10. And then Thursday was 11. So in gallons, that's like 2.25 gallons, 2.5 gallons, and then it ended up being like 2.9 gallons was my Thursday mark. Now, with that, we also loaded salt and water. So I didn't do too much like extra, but I would have a lot of LMNT packets. I actually drank broth as part of my fluid consumption because it's very sodium rich. And that seemed to work really well. So what ended up happening is that I actually ended up cutting all of that weight off with very, very, very minimal sweat. So I was feeling pretty good. You know, when you do these things, you fast the last day. So that would have been Friday, day before weigh-ins. I was fasted from sun up all the way until 11 a.m. Saturday. So it was about 36 hours. So, you know, you get tired. You haven't had many carbs the last few days. Your brain's a little foggy, but physically I felt pretty good. If anybody's ever done a water cut, you would know that, you know, one of the hardest parts is when you're mega dehydrated and hungry, you have no food in your system. If you try to sweat out, whether it's the sauna or the hot baths, those really tend to make you feel like crap. So I was really relieved that I got so close just from this, you know, very, very high level of water dosing. So on the refeed this time, you know, we still want to get up to like 800. I was at 840 grams of carbs the next day. But one thing I did differently that worked really well was I drank 5 liters of water, which is about 1.25 gallons, within the first 2 hours after weigh-in, on top of getting my IV. And some just observations that I've noticed before is typically I would start eating my foods right away. I'd have my rice and my honey, which is what I used this time. I'd have it immediately, but then I would, you know, be drinking with it. So just again, observationally, I typically don't have a like good pee or good urine, right, for many hours, and also bowel movements as well. That just doesn't really come back until later on in the day. But I was actually getting a pretty good flow through my system this time, which was really nice. It just That's a good comforting sign to me that things are working and moving the way they're supposed to. But the force feeding was pretty intense. So it was a mix of rice mixed with chicken broth to help go down, honey, orange juice, and electrolytes. So I had a lot of LMNT packets. I was able to get some first form electrolytes from the vendor that was there. I had coconut water, Powerades. I like Powerade Zero a lot. It's just something that really goes in very, very well for me. And mixed with a couple Body Armor drinks. So it's an important thing to remember with your refeeds is that, a lot of salt is good, but your body absorbs electrolytes in proper ratios. So you need to have more than salt. You have to have high levels of potassium and magnesium with, eventually those carbs to help you uptake everything. So while LMNTs are really great, you do want to find something like coconut water or those Body Armors. The reason I like those so much is because they're higher potassium levels than most of the other electrolyte drinks. Now, of course, you could also just have bananas. That works really well too, but just things to consider, right? Now, I was able to get back up to, I was at like 87 kilos by the end of the day. I ended up getting back to about 194. Was feeling pretty good. I also had a couple good nights sleep going in, which is critical. When you're doing this weight cut process, one of the dangers is really going too hard too quick and then sacrificing sleep. And sleep should always be your priority, no matter what. And this is, when you're getting into competition, the closer you are with your like day-to-day habits and rhythms and patterns, the better you're going to do. So even if you're totally depleted, even if you haven't had any water, even if you have any food, if you normally sleep pretty well, like you've trained your body to get into deep, restful sleep, you're going to have an easier time to do that under extreme circumstances. So that's just like a thing. That's why it's so important to be good at these habits in the long term for all times, because it helps you in the moments that matters the most. But also, with like deep sleep, REM sleep, you're building up more or less like a bank of rewired neurons, right? During training, this is how we get stronger, smarter. This is how we make changes in our body, is to break it down, tear it down. And REM sleep and deep sleep, they work in different ways, but they go to rebuild, that fatigue that you've been accumulating over time. And this doesn't just happen over a night or 2 nights or even like a week or weeks, right? This is a long-term process. So when you're tapering, you have light workouts going into this, but you're still under a high state of systemic fatigue from the month or months of training going in, right? So the more you can kind of fill up your tank with deep sleep at all times, the better you're going to do. So that was that. Really good time. One thing I did like is that we got headshots on this one, and they gave us our headshots, or they took them rather, after we were weighed in and stuff. So we came back about 6:30 for headshots for 7 o'clock rules meeting, and then we started at noon on Sunday. So it's a real treat and a privilege to be able to do a show like this, because I like fast-paced shows, and there's only 11 of us. So there was not really a lot of problems with warm-ups. There was a lot of accessibility to equipment. It wasn't overwhelming with space. That's not a problem that I have anyways, but it just makes the whole day easier when you can really kind of go at your own pace. You're not stepping on anybody's toes when you want to jump in. And people are really inclined to help you out if you needed to move the yoke height up or down or load plates, right? Especially on the deadlift. People were pretty cooperative with, hey, I want to go up one, I want to go down one, especially when you're in the suit and your movement's already restricted. That was a really nice thing to have at this. So going into event one thing that's kind of interesting here that I have not had before is order of event one was completely randomized. Okay, so it's just literally click of a button, spin wheel, totally randomized, and I end up going second. And now overheads for me historically have been a weaker point, but was feeling pretty good. The circus dumbbell, if I were to hit it, would have been a PR, but it just wasn't there. But if you watched any of the stream, there's only 3 people that were successfully able to complete a dumbbell rep. So that left me in tied fourth right out the gate. A really good place to start. Very happy with it. My log felt good. Axle felt good. It's really cool to press a Slater log. They're very heavy duty Arsenal knurled axles, which were cool. They felt good and heavy, but like really nice to grip on. So that was fun. Moved right along, and then we got into the deadlifts. Now, with the deadlifts, the way they ordered this was powerlifting style. So everybody got their first attempt all the way through. Everybody got their second attempt all the way through, and then their third attempt all the way through. So if you were starting at a higher weight, you were later on in the order. So I really thought that I had a good chance at winning this event going into training. But we did find out on Wednesday night that former world champion Ricky Banjanaban had signed up. So everybody gives their openers. I opened up at 645, and Ricky, and then also Harold Carter opened at 685. So, there's always the yin yang. It's at the same time, it's like, shit, but also like, let's go. Because I didn't really know if I'd have to take 725 to win it. I would have anyways. If Ricky wasn't there, at least one. I know Mason Cup hit 685, and maybe one or two others, but I did have to end up pushing a little bit to 685 was my second attempt, and 725 was my third. So one thing that I really kind of disagree about that was run with this, and this is minor because like no big deal. But right, we had set weight jumps. So the listed weight jumps were at, from my position, you could have done 615, 645, 685, 725, and then 765. So one thing I had a little bit of a problem with is that, Ricky did open at 685. He did 685, 725. I came out to match at 725, and they did actually give him a choose your own attempt because it was for an American record. Now, I don't want to sound negative about this, but like I think according to the rules, since that was his third attempt, he should have had to do the next weight jump up, which was 765. They did let him do 735, so he ended up beating me by 10 pounds, but that was his third attempt. That was not listed in the rules as it was played out. But, I don't know how much that would have really shaken things up. I would have gained half a point on that event, would have really maybe shifted some things up. It might not have. It doesn't matter. But just kind of an observation there that I don't want to say it's like not fair because it's not that that's what it was. It's just like that was not consistent with the rules. But regardless, I hit 725, so I was temporarily the holder of the American deadlift record, which was pretty exciting. Very, very cool. That's something I've wanted to do my entire life, was to break a big deadlift record. So I hit it. It was broken 5 minutes later, and then we moved right along. I'm really proud of that because, not only is it a 4 times bodyweight deadlift and a huge PR, all-time PR and pound-for-pound PR, not even close, but that makes me one of only 3 Americans in history in the lightweight class to deadlift over 700. So I think it puts me somewhere in the top 10 all time. I'm just beyond thrilled because the peak works. For me, in anybody in strongman, you got to know what your banner events are, and like that's one where I've continued to deliver when there's a heavy deadlift. Right, very rarely get beaten on deadlift, so I'm very excited about that. We moved right into it was the Zercher yoke. Then you would run back, pick up a 300-pound sandbag, run down, drop over the bar, and then do it again in the other direction. Now, unfortunately, this was my low light of the day because I did really, really well until it was time to load that 300-pound sandbag, and then I just dropped it. What a bummer. Now, the way that scoring worked on this one was really unfortunate because they only gave you a time if you completed the entire set, top to bottom. Otherwise, you got points for implements. So that means Zercher yoke down, 1. Run back at the sandbag, down, 2. Zercher yoke back, 3. And you only got any sort of extra on that if you were able to successfully load that bag up and over. So I was as close as you could have gotten. As close as you could have gotten. And because I did not load that, that put me in a tie for 5th even though I moved that sandbag so much further than many other people. You could have technically moved it an inch, and then you would have gotten the same score as me for moving it, a whole extra 25 or 30 feet or whatever it was. Now, in no way am I complaining about this because rules are rules. You have to play with what you have, but I'm just telling you that one stung a little bit. Regardless, moved those really phenomenally. I'm very happy with that. I mean, a 300-pound sandbag for 175 weight class guys is pretty phenomenal, and that is kind of a blessing because I'll never remember that moment. Had I ended up doing that, I would have won the event and would have been on the podium to finish the day. But that's just how it goes. You have to continue to work and learn and apply from the mistakes that you've made in the past. So, guaranteed next time I have this same opportunity, I'm going to execute. It's unfortunate it didn't happen this past weekend, but hey, now I learned. Now I know. It's all good. But that, so we're talking about heavy log cleans, heavy axle clean, heavy max deadlift, and then this Zercher and sandbag yoke. This is so heavy on the posterior chain, a lot of back fatigue. So I was feeling it pretty intensely right after this one. My back was just cooked. I mean, holding that sandbag is a lot on the low back. So we went right into yoke and power stairs. And I fortunately was able to kind of hype up and tune in like really sharply on that. I did finish the run, felt great about it. But from an honest critique, like I should have been just like a little faster on that one. It's all good. It's all good. But that was a really cool event. We had a yoke 25 feet down and back, which was 640. I was pretty excited to be able to run pretty well with 640, even under a pretty high fatigue state. That was actually the first time in years that I've used smelling salts to kind of like hype me up because I'm going to tell you, I was feeling pretty fried at this point in time. So I had a little bit of some blueberry pie smelling salts from Ross Remillard. Helped pep me right up and lock in and get in the zone. So that's not something I typically do, but I probably will have a pack of those around somewhere, just in the toolkit, tools in the toolkit, And then we finished with a double farmer's walk. We did 250 down, 275 back. I had another okay time. With that, I completed it, no drops. Felt pretty good, but I had, I think, a 6th place finish in that event. So that put me in 5th place overall by a half a point. Now, the one thing that I am really there's a lot of things I'm very proud of on this, but when you look at high level shows, you usually have kind of groups and separations between people. Although I did make the OSG World Finals, I did crack the top 10 last year. The truth is, after the top 5 guys, there's a pretty big drop off in points. So I'm not upset about that. I still earned my place in the finals, but it's just another indicator that there's a lot of work to be done. This time I felt that I was in that top flight, and here's why. Between me and Mason, who's in 4th, it was only a half a point of difference, right? And then below me, there was a 10-point difference down to 6th. So the gap was really pretty wide. Now, the one thing that's kind of hyping me up is the only people that I lost to 4 through 1. I mean, Ricky was a former world champion at OSG. Cody won the Arnold this past year. Josh Kowalewski has been on multiple OSG podiums and has won the Arnold twice. And then Mason Cup is a natural world champion. It's good to be in the hunt with some of these guys. That's the coolest thing. This is the reason why I chose America's Strongest Man, is so that I could be amongst the very best competition. This is not a disparaging remark, but Pro Strongman League was the day before out in Maryland. It's a very high level show, but unfortunately, when you look at just roster, the caliber, I think we had one of the toughest lineups that's ever been assembled for the lightweight class in strongman, especially here in America. It's just an absolute killer group, man. So a lot of things to take away, but as a strength athlete, it's all about getting yourself amongst the very best competition you can. Getting into some tough things where you might not be able to finish or fail. It's not a failure if you learn, but you know what I mean. And then continuing to show up. It's just getting more high level competitive reps that's going to make all the difference in the world, because you can see what the best people do. You can see how they warm up, how they act backstage, their manners, like just little tips and tricks that happen, and you just like by osmosis absorb that stuff by being around it. You have no idea what the caliber of these guys is like until you're there. When I went to my first OSG in 2023, I had a lot of the physical abilities to do well. However, my pace and just my gamesmanship was not totally on. I was nervous because it was my first Worlds. I usually do okay with competition jitters, but the more reps I get, like when I go to OSG this year, like that show is going to be a pretty favorable pace and will be very comfortable for me compared to having to go, 5 events that are all hard and heavy in the span of 4 hours. When you only have 2 hours, 2 events over 2.5 hours, it's going to make a huge difference. But like, again, it's just all about experience. You can take away some of the anxiety or nerves that you get by being on big stages. Especially this one, like a lot of the attempts were either 2 people at once, or sometimes like the overhead medley and the deadlift, it was just you up there. So there's a pretty loud expo hall. There's a lot of people there. So when all eyes are on you, the first time you get into a situation like that, it may be a little overwhelming, but the more you do that, the more second nature it comes, the more you can block it out. I was in a good place where I was pretty aware of my surroundings. I could see, I had some friends that came, I had some family that came to watch. Like I could see them. I knew right where they were. I was able to just kind of tune in internally to the state and the level that I needed to be. Right. And that's only really through experience. Last year I did OSG, did OSG regionals. I did South Carolina Strongest Man, big regional show, and USS Nationals in Denver. So this is all just, from those accumulating reps, I'm much more at ease with myself when it's time to step up and get after it. And let me tell you, I just love competing. Like my juice is back. So happy with how everything went at this show. And competing is just such an absolute blast. So I'm in a place now where I've got about 4.5 months until OSG. I'm very excited to just kind of get after it, get in some hard training. But this week I will be resting. So that's kind of a quick overview. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I will be dropping some highlights and stuff a little later on. EFI Studios, what's up, Chuck? Thank you, man. Pretty awesome, man. I mean, one thing I think about over and over and over again from one of our clubstrongman.com calls was, Nick Canby said, if you PR and everything but finish second to last, is that still a loss? And the answer is no. This is one of the best performances I've ever had, man. I really badly wanted a podium spot, but I aimed high and I was forced to compete very, very hard. And I learned some things about what I need to do in the future. So this is only a gigantic stepping stone forward. So I would like to just open up the floor. If anybody's got a comment, question, concern, would love to hit it, but I'm not going to be staying on too long today. I just wanted to keep up with these Tuesday night lives for Strongman. So I really appreciate everybody's support over the weekend, man. It feels awesome to have so many people really rooting and cheering me on. I'm really just so grateful for that. Thank you so much. Can't wait to do better, and I know I got it in me. That's like one of the craziest things that I've learned is I thought that I had, a ceiling, but truly no, there is no ceiling. There is no ceiling because I had an amazing show, but I still have so much more to go. Yeah, deadlift killed it, man. 5-minute American record holder. Hell yeah. 5 minutes. And I think I maybe said this at the beginning. Like, I feel completely absolved of my push to want to go after a deadlift record. I've wanted to do that for 15 years, man, maybe more. Set a deadlift record. I've always been good at it. I've always been, very, very strong pulling off the floor, but I truly have no desire to do it anymore because I did it. And now full speed ahead to wanting I want a world title. I want to hit it. I want more than this top 10. I want more than to just win a regional, man. I want to go big. So I'm feeling really motivated and more importantly, feeling capable. So, all right, guys, I'm going to be popping out here. Thank you for tuning in. Got lots of cool content coming in this week. Stay tuned and stay strong and have a championship night.